Hey, so looking forward to doing group with you guys tonight, and I'm praying that God will do great things in you. For our study today, our focus will be on our responsibility to embrace maturity in our lives. We're going to look at Ephesians chapter 4, verses 13 through 16. It says, "Until we all reach unity in the faith and the knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ, then we will no longer be infants, tossed back and forth by the waves and blown here and there by every wind of teaching and by the cunning and craftiness of people and their deceitful scheming." Verse 15 says, "Instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become in every respect the mature body of Him who is the head, that is Christ. From Him, the whole body, joined and held together by every supporting ligament, grows and builds itself up in love as each part does its work." Paul's focus in these verses is our movement towards spiritual maturity as the body of Christ. He begins by recognizing that each of us, when we give our lives to Jesus, begin as infants. We're not born spiritually mature. Yes, we are filled with God's Spirit. However, we are immature and our lives are marked by the potential of outstanding growth. On Sunday, I showed a clip from Boss Baby where the main character is a baby in a suit, wearing a tie, with the voice of Alec Baldwin, who acts like an adult. It's funny stuff, right? But we don't have this expectation. When a child is born, we don't expect them to be mature. We expect them to be an infant. But the nature of Paul's language here is that he expects our growth, leaving behind our infancy to become mature, growing into spiritual adulthood. And the language of Paul, our unity is the key to our maturity as a body. He says in verses 13 through 14, "We all reach unity in faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, then we will no longer be infants." Going back to the foundation of last week of living a life worthy of the calling we've received, each of us have a responsibility to pursue unity and togetherness with the body of Christ that we're in relationship with. We must recognize our dual role of learning from others and expressing our gifts towards one another. We leave infancy by growing, and this happens by giving ourselves effectively and intentionally to the relationships that we're in. Therefore, when pursuing unity in relationship with other people, there are two truths that we must embrace. Number one, don't be shocked by the immaturity of others. And the second, don't dare put up with spiritual immaturity in your own life. As we mature, verse 16 tells us, Jesus is the foundation and source of our growth. Without Him, unity is impossible. But it also says this happens as each part or person does its part. Stepping back one verse, verse 15, we see Paul highlight three ideas that speak to our part. He says, instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become in every respect the mature body of Him who is the head, that is Christ. This verse speaks to the ethic that must define the body of Christ if we're truly going to grow. An ethic is a set of moral principles that define conduct toward other people. The three key words in this verse that are define our ethic are truth, love, and growth. So let's focus on these three words. First, truth. We are to speak truth. One great struggle we have in relationships, in building unity, is being honest when difficult situations arise in relationship, because it's hard. It means confronting divisive issues in our relationship rather than avoiding them because of the time it would take to process or the difficulty of being vulnerable. But we have to recognize in these issues that there are only two options to consider. Either we are being honest or we're being dishonest. And honesty is required for unity to be present. Second word is love. Truth and honesty are required, but Paul is clear that it must be linked with love, for truth without love is harsh. The essence of love and our honesty revolves around our heart of humility, where we prefer others above self. We express sacrifice and servanthood in our conversations. So when speaking in love, compassion drives our words. We recognize who we're speaking with, recognize their background, their fears, their worries, recognize their status in life. Speaking to the infant analogy earlier, I treat an infant differently than I do an adult because of the unique place they are in life. Love drives this compassion as we recognize who we are speaking to, which defines how we speak. And the third word is growth. Growth in the body occurs when, as we said in verse 16, we each do our part of speaking truth and love in our relationships. So our movement from infancy to maturity is dependent on each of us embracing Paul's conviction and investing into the relationships that we're in, being honest at all times with compassion driving our conversations. So as you dive into discussion today, be honest with yourself about where you are in your path to maturity, about the compassion that you are showing to others who are on their own path to maturity, and whether you're doing your part in growing unity within the body of Christ. Hope you guys have a great group, have a great discussion. Please be sure to invest. Please do a great job of listening and then speaking when needed. Love you guys, and I can't wait till next week.